They all thought it was just another Target. Run. Until something terrifying followed them home. From stalking strangers in parking lots to men who mistake you for their dead granddaughter. These aren't just stories, they're real encounters told by the people who survived them. You'll never look at a shopping trip the same way again. Welcome back to our channel, where the ordinary turns terrifying, and every story you hear is based on real events. Tonight we dive into 5 chilling encounters that all began in the most familiar place, your local Target store. A father stalked through a dark parking lot. A teenager mistaken for a dead relative. A mother followed by strangers with hidden intentions. A child left alone in the wrong aisle. These are not urban legends. These are true stories that reveal how quickly comfort can turn into fear. So grab your blanket, lock your doors, and get ready. Because what you're about to hear might just happen to you. Story 1. The man in the parking lot. It was a quiet Thursday night, around 8 p.m., when I went to Target with my pregnant wife and our 2-year-old son. The parking lot was half empty, and the store felt eerily still. Most shoppers had already gone home for the night. As my wife wandered through the aisles in search of baby essentials, I let my son play in the clothing racks, laughing and crawling under the hangers like it was his private fortress. Then I noticed them. 2 men. They weren't shopping. No carts, no baskets. Just slowly walking the same aisles we were, over and over again. One wore a hood pulled down low. The other had a baseball cap shadowing his eyes. My gut clenched. They weren't looking at items. They were watching us. I shook off the feeling, trying not to jump to conclusions. But then my son began to cry. A meltdown over not getting another Buzz Lightyear toy. My wife and I exchanged a look. I told her to go check out, and I'd take him to the car to calm down. As we exited the store, I looked back. The man in the hood was following us. No pretending, no subtlety, just 20 feet behind, keeping our pace. My heart was pounding. I held my son tighter and began walking faster, cutting diagonally through the parking lot. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, and every step I took seemed louder than the last. I looked back again. He was still there. I made a split-second decision. Instead of going to our car, I looped around to the front of the store. That's when he appeared. Like he knew I would double back. We were alone, just 10 feet apart. We stared at each other. I was holding my son in one arm. My other hand slowly slid under my shirt, resting on the grip of my concealed pistol. "Why are you following me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, steady. He didn't flinch. "I want to make sure that child is yours," he said, his voice cold and firm. "You could be abducting him." "What?" He took a step closer. I said back off. I snapped, but he kept yelling, accusing me, in the middle of an empty parking lot, just a breath away from confrontation. Everything in my body screamed danger. I tightened my grip on my son and told the man to leave or I'd call the police. That's when something in him shifted. His posture changed. His face twisted in something between anger and fear. And then he ran. He sprinted across the lot, jumped into a car, and sped away into the night. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding, my child clutching my neck. We were safe, but barely. That night changed how I moved through the world. I don't know what his true intentions were, but I know how close I came to something far worse. Story 2. You Are My Granddaughter. Back in 2003, I worked at a 3-story Target store in Melbourne. I was 18, standing 6'2", covered in tattoos, and not someone you'd typically forget if you saw me at checkout. I spent most of my shifts ringing up customers, but sometimes I was assigned to the DVD. Basement, quiet, colder, dimmer. One ordinary afternoon, a gray-haired man in glasses approached my register. He wasn't holding anything to buy. He just smiled and said, "Wow, you remind me so much of my granddaughter. Harmless, right?" I laughed awkwardly, trying to stay polite. He started asking questions, one about my family, where I was from, how long I'd lived in the area. I gave vague answers, still assuming this was just a lonely old man making conversation. He ended the chat with, "I might bring in some photos next time to show you." I smiled, said sure, and went on with my day. But he came back. 2 weeks later, there he was, this time with photos, his so-called granddaughter, and family. I glanced at them out of courtesy. There was some resemblance, but nothing striking. Still, he lingered, standing nearby, watching me. Something felt off. He didn't buy anything again, just stared. I didn't tell anyone, just brushed it off. That was my mistake. 3 weeks passed, and then it got disturbing. He returned, but this time his energy had changed. He looked sad, hollow. As I was heading toward my break, he appeared again, out of nowhere, and blocked my path. "I brought more photos," he said, and showed me images. That sent a chill down my spine. They were from a funeral. Open casket, flowers. A photo display of a woman and a child. Who brings funeral photos to a store? I thought, unsettled. "My daughter and granddaughter," he whispered. "They were murdered. My son-in-law killed them both." I was speechless. He continued, tears pooling in his eyes. "But I've found you again," he said. My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" "You are my granddaughter," he said, smiling. "I know it. I'm so happy to see you again." My body froze. "No, I'm sorry, but I'm not. I've missed you so much." Then he reached out, grabbed my arm, tried to hug me. At that moment, by pure luck, one of my tall co-workers, Grant, walked by. "Hey, Grant," I called out with fake cheer. "Still need help with that cage?" Grant looked confused, then saw my face, and nodded. "Yeah, that'd be good." I slipped away and got into the elevator, heart pounding, tears threatening. Upstairs, I finally told my manager. He took it seriously, said I could stay in the basement to avoid further encounters. The man didn't return for a few weeks, but one afternoon, I clocked in, walked to the register, and saw him. This time, he didn't see me, thank God. I backed away, hurried to the elevator, found my manager. He told me to stay in the basement while they handled it. What I learned later still haunts me. The man had started yelling in the store, screaming that his granddaughter worked here. Security said he was holding women's clothing, a bracelet, and those same funeral photos. He refused to leave, shouting a name, not mine, but presumably hers. They had to physically drag him out. I never saw him again. I left the job not long after and moved back to Alderley. Part of me still feels pity for that man. Grief can twist the mind, but something inside him had snapped. And I'll never forget the way he looked at me, like I was someone long dead, returned from the grave. Story 3. The Men Who Followed Us. It was a sunny afternoon in July. My sons, 4 and 6 years old, were bursting with excitement as we walked into Target to buy back-to-school supplies. It was supposed to be a simple trip, something I had done dozens of times, but this time I couldn't shake the tension building in my chest. As a mom, especially these days, I've trained myself to always be aware, to watch every shadow, every glance, every silence. And that day my instincts were screaming before I could even understand why. We were browsing the women's clothing section when I noticed them, 2 older men lingering nearby. At first I thought it was coincidence, but they weren't shopping. One of them clutched a single small item. No cart, no conversation, just glances, stares. We moved on to the baby aisle. They followed, to toys, to makeup. Everywhere we went, they appeared. I kept my sons closer than ever. My heart was pounding now. I tried to stay calm, brushing it off as paranoia, but my gut was twisting with dread. When we finally headed to the checkout area, I saw a large group of nurses leaving the store. I intentionally slowed down and blended in with them, hoping to vanish in the crowd. The moment I was out the doors, I grabbed my sons and practically threw them into the car. I didn't even buckle them, just slammed. The doors shut and locked them. Then I looked up. The 2 men walked out of the store, empty-handed, no bags, no receipt, just scanning the lot, like they were looking for someone. Me. I ducked down, but realized it was too late. They saw me. I turned the car on, about to drive off, when I checked my rearview mirror. They were following me in a dark truck, creeping behind my car as I slowly rolled through the lot. Panic exploded in my chest. I stopped, grabbed my phone, and took a photo of them through the rearview mirror, hoping the flash would make it clear I wasn't scared, to call for help. The moment the light flashed, their truck stopped. Then they turned around and drove back toward the store, but I wasn't done. I pulled my car over several stores away where they couldn't see me and called the police. I could barely breathe. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. While waiting for the officers, I looked back toward the store, and that's when I saw one of the men standing beside the truck, changing his shirt. Why? Was he trying to disguise himself? He walked right back into the store like nothing had happened. I felt like I was in a nightmare. When the police arrived, I gave them every detail. The faces, the truck, the timing. They took it seriously, but no one really knew what these men had planned. But I know this, that day, my instincts may have saved my life. More importantly, they may have saved my children. To this day, I haven't been back to that store without my husband. And even then, I keep looking over my shoulder, waiting for those same eyes to find us again. Story 4. The Pillow Aisle. I was 5 years old. We lived in a small town in Florida, not one of the big cities, just a quiet suburban area that looked clean and safe on the surface. But what I didn't know then, and what I would learn years later, is that our area was one of the worst in the country for human trafficking. And Target? Well, that was our go-to store. That day, my mom and I were running errands. I can't remember exactly what we needed, maybe groceries or household items, but I do remember the pillow aisle. It looked like a soft, fluffy playground to my little 5-year-old brain. While my mom was rushing ahead, I tugged on her hand. "Wait, Mama, I want to test the pillows." She glanced back with that usual tired look in her eyes and snapped, "Hurry up, I don't have time for this," before disappearing around the corner of the aisle. That's when I was alone. I knelt down, pressing my face into the softest pillow on the shelf, pretending I was in my own tiny cloud world. The store was quiet, peaceful, still, until I felt it, that weird silence, the kind that feels watched. I looked up and locked eyes with a man. Standing at the end of the aisle, he wasn't shopping. He didn't look away. When I saw him, he just stood there, staring. I didn't know what fear was back then. Not the real kind. But my stomach flipped. My skin went cold. My knees felt shaky as I stood. I called out, "Mama?" No answer. The man took a step forward. I took a step back. I started walking fast, then running in the direction I last saw my mom. I was small, so I weaved between carts and shelves, past aisles of shampoo and snacks and shoes, until finally I saw her, my mom, standing in line. I ran up and hugged her tightly. She looked annoyed. "Did you test your pillow?" she asked, not even noticing the terror on my face. I never told her about the man. I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't have the words. But I knew what I felt. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't lost. He was waiting. And I sometimes wonder if I had stayed in that aisle just a few seconds longer, what would have happened? Story 5. Seconds from vanishing, I don't know why we were at Target that day. I just know I was 5 years old. And like always, I was expected to behave. No tantrums, no whining, and absolutely no wandering. That was the rule. We were somewhere near the middle of the store when we passed the pillow aisle, and to my little brain, the wall of pillows looked magical, like clouds stacked up just for me to explore. I tugged on my mom's hand. "Can I test the pillows?" She stared at me for a second, sighed, and muttered, "Hurry up, I don't have time for this," before walking away without looking back. So I stayed. I knelt on the cold white floor and pressed my face into a giant memory foam pillow. It felt soft, safe, comforting. For a few moments I imagined I was in my own world, a dream world, far from the fluorescent lights and the impatient adult footsteps echoing in the distance. But then everything changed. The air shifted. It was like the sound around me dulled, like someone had turned down the volume of the world. I looked up. There was a man at the end of the aisle. He wasn't moving. He wasn't pretending to shop. He wasn't blinking, just staring right at me. I didn't understand why my chest felt tight or why my knees started shaking. I just knew, deep inside my child-sized bones, that something was wrong, very wrong. I stood up slowly. He took a step forward. I stepped back. My heart raced. I turned and began to walk, then to run, calling softly at first, then louder, "Mama? Mama!" Nothing. The shelves around me blurred. As I ran, the toy section, the baby clothes, the rows of shampoo and snacks. I was weaving through the store in a panic, tears building in my eyes. And just when the fear began to boil over, I saw her, my mom, still shopping, still unaware. I ran to her and grabbed her arm. "What now?" she said, annoyed. I couldn't even speak. She never saw the man, never noticed the danger that almost was. But I did. And years later, when I learned that our area in Florida had one of the highest rates of human trafficking in the country, it hit me like a punch to the gut. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't lost. He was hunting, and I was almost gone. Not all horror happens in the dark. Sometimes it hides in fluorescent lights, familiar aisles, and everyday routines. These stories remind us that danger doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it just walks beside us, pretending to shop, pretending to smile. Whether it's a stare that lingers too long, footsteps that follow too close, or a stranger who knows your name. Always trust your gut. Always stay aware, because in a world full of people, not everyone has good intentions. If these stories gave you chills, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true scary encounters from everyday life. And remember, the scariest stories are the ones that could happen to you.